Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Sit Downs with Charlie Brown. I'm your host, DJ Charlie Brown, or whatever you choose to call me, coming to you live once again for America's pastime. Baseball was an experience this year, that's putting it mildly. Even with the threats of a major lockout looming, one thing is certain, the Fall Classic is once again upon us. But before we go over the two squaring off, we should check up on the teams that fell short or have been out of baseball for a while now. The Baltimore Orioles. Well, this season turned out to be a massive nightmare in more ways than one. A year where the O's were expected to take the next step saw a collapse that nobody saw coming. The pitching falling apart wasn't a massive shock, if we're being honest. Letting Corbin Burnes walk and trying to fill it with stopgaps failed terribly. The only highlights from the staff this year were Trevor Rogers finding somewhat of his old form for a little bit, Tomoyuki Sugano emerging out of nowhere, Povich and Eflin being on the struggle bus, and Charlie Morton being more washed than my laundry before being told to pack his bags and leave. What I'm more concerned with is the hitting core suffering serious regression. Besides Jackson Holliday, Jordan Westerberg, and Gunnar Henderson, nobody could hit the side of a barn. Tyler O'Neill was disappointing, and Heston Kjerstad had a season best to drink away sometimes. Come the deadline, the O's called it and parted ways with some of their old pieces. While they got someone to take Charlie Morton, they had to say goodbye to the likes of O'Hearn, Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Luis Urias, Ramon Laureano, and Cedric Mullins. The returns are nice, and they do have a lot more prospects on the way, but I don't know if the O's are satisfied with that. Mike Elias wasn't surprisingly fired, but his seat is starting to get warm up there in Baltimore. For me, the O's need to do two things this offseason. First is start locking up your young core. Henderson and Holliday are Scott Boras clients. You do the math in that regard. While locking up Sam Basayo actually makes sense considering his age and performance, what are you going to do with Adley Rutschman? This might signify they have given up on him. Secondly, you're going to need an ace that isn't garbage, so you got to go shopping for one. I was told that ownership was willing to foot the payroll for this new core. You guys aren't seriously going to waste this window you have, right? Right? The Tampa Bay Rays. Sadly, the clock struck midnight on the Rays' hot streak that they were on. They were looking good entering the month of September, but considering their division, it simply wasn't enough to get them into the dance. That being said, this was not a total loss for the Rays. In fact, it's probably leaving them excited. Yandy Diaz, Junior Caminero, and Brandon Lau prove why they are the leaders of the Rays. Chandler Simpson, Jake Magnum, and Jonathan Aranda look like the future stars of the group. Pitching, however, is something you clearly need to work on. Besides Drew Rasmussen and Ryan Pepoit, it was a massive tire fire. They tried to load up at the deadline by adding Adrian Hauser and Griffin Drax, but both sadly combusted in horrific fashion. Even for having a decent offense, little could be done to try and squeeze this team into a playoff spot. However, even for the struggles and frustrations exiting this year, Rays fans are out here celebrating as if they won it all. Remember that sale we were talking about back in August that I brought up? It became official. Sternberg is officially gone. His reign of terror and constant corner-cutting payroll is officially over, Rays fans. You're free. Word of advice to the new group stepping in, if you want fan support, don't be like Stu. The hope is that this is the start of the Rays becoming like a lot of the other teams in Tampa and being extremely successful. Translation, you are probably going to be throwing a lot of money at Pete Alonso. Also, maybe retire the Trop as well. Getting a new stadium will really help out in that regard. The Chicago White Sox. The only positive that it wasn't as bad as it was last year for Southside, even if it was only by a few wins and not as many off-the-field headaches. The reality is, even with Reinsdorf releasing his control on the team, it's going to be a bit before the Sox can really strike again. You're not just trying to fix the roster, but essentially fixing the organization as a whole. However, there are at least some things you can hang your hat on for this year. Lennon Sosa and Chase Meredith look like quality pieces of the future team. The long-awaited debuts of Kyle Teel and Colson Montgomery came this year as well. They were able to get a great haul for Adrian Hauser. While they did hold on to Luis Roberts Jr. and need to make a decision with him this offseason, it could be worse. While still not what fans want, it's at least some semblance of a foundation to start building off. Next year is likely going to be more prospect watching, but at the very least, it's going to be better vibes that are getting better each day. You can at least hold something to be proud of in this regard, though. You have the powers of the Pope being a fan of this team. It's the best thing you got right now. Take it. The Kansas City Royals. I'm in two stages of thought with the Royals, and are for very valid reasons. It's clear the team suffered regression from last year and struggled to find consistency. Even with Bobby Witt Jr. being a borderline experience at the plate most nights, Salvador Perez joining the 300 home run club, Vinny Pasquantino tearing the cover off the ball, and Michael Garcia rebounding after last year's slump, nothing else is around them. However, that might be changing based on a lot we saw from them this year. While Jax Caglione struggled in his debut this year, he is likely to be a future star in the making. They were able to get an actual foundation for their rotation with Noah Cameron, Michael Wacha, and Chris Bubich bouncing back. Main concern is trying to make adjustments for the rest of the rotation and tweaks to the bullpen. You can easily make some moves in free agency. You're fortunate that the expectations for this group aren't overly high yet, but time and patience are growing thin. Get to it, boys. You don't want the Chiefs to constantly be having all the fun in this town. The Minnesota Twins. Oh, God. They really made me have to separate these notes, didn't I? So this is going to be a little different given some things that have happened regarding this team that I am painfully a fan of. So follow along as I give my statements. Dear Byron Buxton, words cannot begin to describe how truly sorry I am. This was one of your best seasons you have had in your entire career. Injuries have destroyed a lot of your seasons, and this was the first time you put together a campaign that you can be proud of. Anytime it gets brought up now, it's just going to be more with an asterisk given the status of what happened. I know you have said you are committed to this team and city, but if you ever wanted out this offseason, I would not be upset with it, dude, okay? Just know this. We still love you, man, and you are a hero to us, and we will look forward to the day seeing 25 hang in left field. To the guys who are still here, meaning Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Royce Lewis, etc., I'm sorry if I missed you. I also owe you guys an apology. I know you guys had your struggles, but you guys were battling all through the year only to watch this team get put into a flaming tire. I just don't know, guys. I'm so sorry. Sorry. I'm hoping to God like this isn't your last seasons as well, but I would understand why. Just note that you guys will always have a home here, and we still appreciate you no matter what. To the guys who got traded off at the deadline, I also owe you an apology. In this entire situation, you were viewed as collateral damage. I guarantee you that if we had it our way, you guys would still be here, but that's not the case. You'll get the opportunity to play October ball, but it's not going to be the same like it was 2 years ago. I wish the best for all you guys as you keep going in your careers and your families as well. To the guys who got called up at the deadline in a hurry, you too are also owed an apology. Simply put, the results are not on you. The failings of the guys above you are the reason why this thing went up in flame. Likely chance you guys are not going to be back, but just note this. It wasn't your fault. Anyone would fail in these circumstances. And finally, I am giving an apology to Rocco Baldelli. I know it's a controversial take, but he wasn't the main reason this season failed. He has his flaws and is by no means the perfect manager, but he has shown that he can succeed if given the right tools to do so. He ended up getting unfairly canned for this, and I guarantee you we are going to regret it. I guarantee that. Just note, Rocco, thank you so much for all the memories you helped create with this team, and I hope you are able to land on your feet soon. This isn't an indictment on you as a manager, and I do think that you can win in any situation. Good luck, man. Now we can get to the grievances that I have with this team, which is mostly two men right now. Derek Falvey. In the past, I've actually liked you as a GM. You've made a couple bad trades here and there, but let's be honest, that's been a ton of GMs. However, the past 2 months have made me question if I should listen to the people who really want you gone. I get that you were probably put into a situation by ownership where they gave you the marching orders, but some of the moves you made no sense. The 1-year guys, I understand. You weren't going to probably re-sign them. Jax blew up with Rocco, so I can understand getting off of him. Personally, I would have not traded Correa, but if the word was that he was causing problems in the locker room, I can be forgiving of that even if the return was terrible. I personally would have held on to Duran another year because I felt that you could get a better deal for him either in the offseason or at the next deadline. But please justify the logic in trading Louis Varland, which I still believe was one of the dumbest moves that you made at the deadline. This has nothing to do with him being a local boy and being one of my personal favorite players. It's the fact that he was still under team control for 4 more years. He was making less than 6 figures. He was thriving in his role out of the pen, and he could have been useful in any form of a rebuild. Personally, I think the only reason why you still have a job right now is because of the farm system you've built. But your seat is officially getting warm. You ended up sacking the one guy who got this team a playoff win for the first time in 20 plus years, and now you got to make a huge commitment into hiring them. If you end up hiring Derek Shelton, I am going to officially be saying you need to go, man. I'm sorry, I don't know you personally, but dude, hiring a guy like Derek Shelton is not going to fix this team. It's not, all right? And now we get to my main grievance in the form of the ownership. For the longest time, I'm debating if I even wanted to take a shot at these guys, but in the end, I decided to do it because it's the thinking that everyone in this state has been having about them. I have an honest and legitimate question for you. Are you guys seriously this tone deaf to the situation? When you are out here being debated in conversations, if you guys are worse than Norm Green, you know that you are in big, big trouble. Now, I'm not going to be upset about the RSN deal. A lot of teams were hit with that, especially in the small markets. But the fact of the matter is, you guys had issues to address it years ago and you didn't. You get your first playoff win since the invention of Facebook. You make the decision to downscale the payroll when your window is open and do nothing to supplement your team. They end up collapsing and missing the playoffs the next year. Fans get upset and you call for change. You oblige by putting the team up for sale. It comes out that you are over $400 million in the hole. You do nothing in the winter to get people excited about the team. You end up inconsistent throughout the year and give them nothing to help them. You end up going scorched earth on the roster, and then you end up pulling the team off the market anyway. You see why I kind of have some frustrations here? It's also a big reason why Target Field attendance has dipped significantly this year alone. People are sick and tired of the poll ads running this team. They have pissed everyone off to the point of fan apathy and stubbornly refusing to admit they are a problem. Well, I will still always be a fan of this team. Even I am getting upset with them. Because I know that truthfully, no miracles are coming around this time during the winter. They're going to stubbornly sit in power while giving terrible ideas and quotes to the media and not being able to spend on this team. Derek Falvey is simply going to make small signing or moves in a faint attempt to try and make this team better when we all know it's going to probably be terrible next year and result in more fan favorites being traded away this offseason. We're going to hire a manager who has very little experience and is going to merely be a placeholder while this team tanks to oblivion. You know, I now understand why Joe Mauer is hanging out with the Vikings, Wild, and Wolves more than you guys. Not because they're bad, but did you see that statue replica they did of him? I understand. While I still love and care about my beloved Twins, I need ownership to really, really change. You know the graphic I'm posting on it? Maybe take that advice. I will take it down when you do, but you should really listen to it. You guys really need to try and win us back, because you're doing a bad job of it right now. Alright, now after that little sidetrack, the Houston Astros. I still can't believe they didn't make it even if it came down to the very end. It was no secret that they were in turmoil heading into the All-Star break, but when things started seeping into the regular season, it was getting dire. Looking at the aftermath, it's a combination of multiple different things that did the Astros in. Shedding payroll and not adequately replacing Kyle Tucker in the outfield became some of the big ones. The hitting core dealt with a ton of injuries through the year, which included Yordan Alvarez being out for majority of the second half. Altuve, Walker, Pena, and other supporting members tried, but even with adding Carlos Correa back at the deadline, it wasn't enough. It also didn't help that the pitching was mostly Hunter Brown and Framber Valdez having to be superheroes. Most of their starters flamed out, and the bullpen regressed hard, with Hader falling to injury, and all the reclamation projects they tried blew up in their face. The end result is missing out on October for the first time in a decade and wondering what the game plan is for the future. Personally, it's hard to tell if this is officially the end of their window because they still have a ton of talent. However, if they want to make one last try, they got to reload on pitching. Valdez is a free agent this winter. The core is getting older, and they need to revamp their entire rotation, along with a laundry list of other issues they have. Meanwhile, baseball prematurely celebrates their demise before this team revives next year because the baseball gods hate us. The LA Angels. For every successful team in LA, there is always a second that must fill the role of little bro. To no one's surprise, the Angels continue to reinforce that narrative time and time again. Don't let the stats and numbers fool you. This season was another massive disaster resulted at the men at the top of the organization. You can tell me all about Zach Nettle being a stud and Nolan Schammel being the future, but that doesn't overlook the fact that there are massive issues wrong with this team. Even with not dealing with his normal amount of injuries this time, Trout has hit a wall he cannot break. Decline due to his age. The only positive is that they weren't having to deal with Anthony Rendon this year saying anything stupid as he wasn't available all year. Pitching was even more of a mess with Kikuchi falling apart after the All-Star break and the one-year experiments flaming out again. It was very clear that they were not going to do anything of note this year, and it would have made you think they would sell off their future at the deadline. They didn't learn from 2022. They ended up splurging on the likes of Luis Garcia, Andrew Chafin, and Oswald Peraza because they think they're ready to make a push. And also like 2022, it collapsed within the matter of weeks. I cannot stress how paramount it is for Artie Moreno to stop meddling in team affairs. He is literally sabotaging this team every chance he gets. Because now the Angels need to go get more one-year rentals to replace the guys leaving, convince or pay a lot of prospects from wanting to leave this mess, pray to God that Mike Trout doesn't inevitably have to retire to where they owe him more money, and also hope that Artie Moreno doesn't do anything stupid like hire Albert Pujols to be the manager. When are you going to learn, Artie? Sometimes the biggest enemy is yourself. The Athletics. I actually have a new name for them this time. They are now officially dubbed the Homeless A's from this point forward. Learning nothing from the Houston Oilers' move to Memphis, the A's got to experience life as a vagabond. Playing in a stadium that every big leaguer hates due to the conditions, and fans were apathetic because they know it's only for the short-term future. Which is unfortunate as their hitting core was really solid this year. Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler continue to play up to their massive contracts. The likes of Jacob Wilson, Tyler Soderstrom, and Nicholas Kurtz, and more were hitting their stride. However, it masks up the issue that their pitching is hot garbage. Severino went from their top acquisition to openly calling the A's out to the media and being a liability. Most of the other starters were either too young or completely cooked. The bullpen was god-awful with an ERA over 5 and nobody having a good season. While they did get a massive haul for Mason Miller and J.P. Sears thanks to A.J. Preller being a madman, it is nowhere near enough to fix their pitching issues. John Fisher has turned a once-proud team into the biggest circus running a low-budget payroll. If you think it's bad now, just wait till they get to Vegas, a place where rivals can spend their weekend watching the team get their butts kicked on a consistent basis. Sell the team, Fisher. We're sick of you, too. The Texas Rangers. It felt like aside from those runs in the early 2010s and 2023, mediocrity is a staple of this team. It's a shame, too, because it wasn't a pitching issue that did him in. DeGrom was fully healthy, Jack Leiter had a better season than last year, and Tyler Mahle came out of nowhere to replace Nathan Eovaldi being out. Problem was they couldn't hit anything until it was too late. By the time Garcia, Smith, Langford, Jung, and Semien got hot, it was too late. The team needed a scapegoat, so sorry, Bruce Bochy. Not even 2 years after winning the World Series, you were unfortunately sacked as manager. In his place, the second coming of Skip Shoemaker to try and rally this team to get back to the playoffs. Rangers have a ton of work to do this offseason if they want to try and get another chance at that. Do you re-sign Mahle knowing the mileage he has? Can you make enough bullpen adjustments to fix the issues? Time will tell on that front, however, we know one thing can be done. If there's one thing that Texas loves more than mediocrity, it is spending all the money they please. Or making the most memeable hat for our viewing pleasure. The Atlanta Braves. This season went from expecting October ball to turning into a massive disaster from the word go. Braves fans want management to do the walk of shame for crimes against their beloved team. Hitting-wise was mostly Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley, and Matt Olson carrying the load. Michael Harris regressed, Ozzy Albies' power got sapped from him, Alex Verdugo was a dud, and Jurickson Profar got suspended for PEDs. Pitching was even worse as nearly every big arm they had suffered injury or regression. Come the deadline, they tried to scramble for whatever they could to try and salvage the year. Problem was that if you're putting your chips on Eric Fetty, Cookie Carrasco, and Tyler Kinley, it's not going to end well. Afterwards, the team just kind of fell apart and it was game over. My question now is what happens? While a few guys are still on the books, they are aging and getting older. That's not even mentioning that Albies and Sale have club options this year and Marcell Ozuna is a UFA. Brian Snitker became the first of many changes in the organization as he's stepping down as manager to be an advisor. Alex Anthopoulos needs to get busy this offseason and fast. With the money and talent they have on the roster, they should have more than one World Series at this time. Clock is ticking, Braves. You don't want to be there when it rings. The Miami Marlins. The eternal rebuild that seemingly has zero end in sight. I will give them credit, they made things interesting throughout the year to say the least. A terrible spring led them to heating up at the halfway point and the deadline. Sadly, come August, it's when the clock struck and they came back to reality. However, I think they're closer than many people would think. Xavier Edwards and Kyle Stowers look like lineup regulars. They had some solid growth from the likes of Otto Lopez, Connor Norby, Eric Wagman, and more. Besides Yuri Perez and Edward Cabrera, the pitching staff is TBD, with Alcantara likely gone and Mike Myers still recovering from hip surgery being the main reason for that. That being said, their bullpen actually turned it around and should be interesting if they can keep most of it together. However, part of me wonders if ownership is going to invest in the product. They haven't done so in years, and it's clear they have no clue what they're doing. And it is hurting their relationship with the city thus far, as you see the attendance figures for the Marlins. As long as they can stick the course, they can maybe survive this. Just please don't do anything stupid. But in the meantime, you can get the greatest accomplishment for this year. Crushing the spirits of New Yorkers everywhere. And that gets us to our next team. How? That's all I have to say. How? This is the only thing I have to describe the Mets season. A team that runs one of the top payrolls in baseball in a huge market somehow not only collapsed but nearly sped ran it in a painful, agonizing fashion. A 94% chance to make the playoffs entering September, and it was literally falling apart slowly in nearly a month's time. Going 10-14 and not losing just the division, but the wild card and probably their dignity in the process. Juan Soto went from being someone giving fans hope about the future to wondering if he's the second coming of Bobby Bonilla. Besides maybe Lindor, everything was bad for the Mets in every single fashion. Alvarez was a liability as a batter and catcher. Vientos kept starting over Beatty, and their deadline acquisition of Cedric Mullins flamed out in less than a week. Pitching was a disaster with several key injuries and the bullpen being a matchbox besides Edwin Diaz. They tried to supplement it with Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto, and more, but they became gas cans on the mound as well. In no way, shape, or form should this team have missed the playoffs. The word failure doesn't even begin to describe how dire the situation was in Queens. Now people are wondering what's going to be the fallout from this season. Alonso already announced that he's opting out of his contract, and this was his last year in Queens. Diaz might be gone as well. Carlos Mendoza is feeling the heat from not having this team focused, and Cohen is ready to chop people's heads off with a machete. The Mets thought they were free after the Wilpons left. But now it's getting worse. It's at the point where we might actually have to say they are cursed, like dead serious. Like, that's the only way we can describe this. You got to fix some stuff, Mets. Otherwise, I beg of you, keep this going. It gives me content and joy to see you guys like this. The Washington Nationals. I've been patient with the Nats in their rebuild, but they are at a critical juncture right now. 2021 saw them strip down everything after winning it all, and 5 years later, there really hasn't been much besides a simple foundation. The problem isn't in the batter's box, as James Wood, Brady House, Robert Hassel III, Darren Lyle, and more are finally hitting their potential in the show. A few of the other guys like Dylan Cruz are taking a bit, but it's at very least something young that can be developed. The bigger issue that I'm noticing is their pitching system is giving them bad results. Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, and Mitchell Parker are okay, but none of those guys are really an ace of the rotation. Their bullpen was even worse, as it was one of the worst in all of baseball. Come the deadline, they once again had to cut their losses. They got some decent pieces in return for the likes of Alex Call, Kyle Finnegan, Mike Soroka, Andrew Chafin, and more, but what else can you do from here? Waiting for more prospects is going to be hard because most of the guys they have in the pitching ranks are AA or lower. The Nats need to make some decisions with their new GM and skipper coming in. As the memories of 2019 slowly become former, just remember this, Nats. You guys did it the right way. Nobody can take that away from you. The Pittsburgh Pirates. Even if I'm depressed as hell about my own team, I can at least take solace that things aren't Pittsburgh Pirates levels of bad. A team that is becoming the baseball equivalent of the Cleveland Browns with how poorly they are run. You guys are blessed with a generational pitcher in Paul Skeens, yet failed to give any help around him. Hence why he had a record of 10-10 this year with an ERA of 197. The rest of the pitching staff was a mess, with Mitch Keller falling off the map and Andrew Heaney's miracle run coming to an end. Hitting was even worse as Brian Reynolds regressed, Henry Davis is all but ruined by the organization, and O'Neal Cruz becoming inconsistent and terrible in center field. When your top three hitters are 38-year-old Andrew McCutchen, Isaiah Counter-Falefa, and the human crash-out dummy Tommy Pham, it's dire. Come the trade deadline, the writing was on the wall. 6 years after blowing it up, they are once again having to blow it up again. Brian Hayes, Caleb Ferguson, Adam Frazier, David Bednar, Bailey Falter, and more were all shipped out for prospects and lottery tickets. Taylor Rogers was immediately picked up by the team from Cincinnati, only to be shipped out to Chicago for an even more underwhelming return. Unfortunately, Pittsburgh, it's likely going to be even more brutal next year. Ben Cherington and Don Kelly are staying put, but don't worry, they have the solution to fixing this team. They're going to gut the entire pitching coach staff. Wait, why did you do that? They were decent and actually good to you. You guys couldn't develop hitting. Sorry, Yinzers, Bob Nutting isn't selling anytime soon. He won't let Skeens be freed for another 4 years as well. And still no word on their future stadium lease possibly expiring. Don't worry, Paul, it's going to go fast. Hopefully they won't ruin you by then. The St. Louis Cardinals. I think the reality is that it felt more like a growth year as opposed to a full-scale rebuild for the Cardinals. St. Louis really struggled with consistency this season, and it shows a lot with their core. While they were fortunate that Brendan Donovan, Mason Wynn, and Alex Burleson started their breakouts, Wilson Contreras bounced back. It resulted in Nolan Arenado, Lars Nootbaar, and Victor Scott II not finding their forms. Also didn't help that Sonny Gray had a bit of a nightmare season that we aren't usually used to seeing out of him. The entire staff was really bad, with Palante and Liberatore falling off, Miles Michaelis likely never seeing the show again, and Eric Freddy being scooped up by Atlanta for a mere return. Come the deadline, they did the right call and pulled the chute. Helsley, Steven Matz, and Phil Morton were all shipped out. It's unfortunate, but the truth is, it feels like it's long overdue. The Cardinals need to embrace the future if they want to get back to the fall, which might result in them likely moving off Nolan Arenado this year. Also, can I politely ask why you guys are still keeping with Oli Marmol? Really feels like he should be canned because I don't think he's going to be good at rebuilding this team as well. The Arizona Diamondbacks. The best way to sum up Arizona this year was that they were the home run kings. They were all or nothing on any given day they played. For every Geraldo Perdomo, Cadel Marte, Corbin Carroll, and Lourdes Gurriel, there were a ton of guys not really hitting their weight. The pitching somehow managed to get even worse after last year's performance. Corbin Burns lasted 11 games before having to fall to the Tommy John gods and may not be available going into the next year. Zach Allen and Brandon Pfaadt regressed massively as well. The only guy really holding his own was Merrill Kelly, who got a one-way bus ticket to Texas. Come the deadline, they pulled the chute as well. Josh Naylor was sold off for a mere pittance, along with Eugenio Suarez and Randall Grichuk. My question now is, where do you go here if you're Arizona? It feels like the team is filled with holes, and there is no way you're going to be able to compete for the division in this state. Not to mention that their farm system is barren and ownership seems very iffy on wanting to spend. Arizona needs to make decisions, otherwise they will be lost at sea. Also, I recommend you guys start getting to work on your stadium lease. It's coming up soon, and if you guys aren't going to play ball, someone else will. I guarantee it. The only positive for the Rockies this year is the fact they were spared from breaking the record set by the last year's White Sox, even though they were very close to doing it and were practically speed running to it at one point. It was arguably their worst season in franchise history through 162 games. Besides Hunter Goodman and Jason Beck hitting a couple dingers here and there, The only good thing about it was a few splash plays from Tyler Freeman. That's about it. The only guy who had a positive WAR on this team was Ezekiel Tovar with 1.2. Their best starter was Kyle Freeland with an ERA of 5.28. The only pitcher who finished with an ERA under 3 was Jimmy Hergert out of the bullpen. Even for all this, the Rockies used their one brain cell and chose the right path. They sold at the deadline. It's a miracle. It was mostly Ryan McMahon and Jake Bird finally being freed from this hell and going to New York for a couple of scraps, but don't tell that to Dick Monfort. Congratulations, Rockies. It was your worst season in franchise history, and you can't pick higher than 10th in this year's draft lottery. Give yourselves a round of applause. They already fired Bud Black, but now GM Bill Schmidt gets to join him as well. The only reason why people even care about this team anymore is Ethan Holiday continuing his dad's legacy. They already wasted one holiday, and they will be certain to waste another. Sell the team already, Monfort, and stop using nepotism in your hiring process while you're at it. The San Francisco Giants. Sadly, I kind of had a feeling this was coming for the Giants. This is a team that really does not have much any clue what they're doing, and it kind of showed in their second half. They had a very strong first half, which saw them within striking distance of a wild card, but then came July, and everything just went downhill from there. The only guys really contributing anything worthwhile on offense were Jung Ho Lee and Helios Ramos. Flores was struggling with his age, Chapman and Adames were underwhelming, and their big splash in Rafi Devers was good for about a month. The only reliable arms in the rotation were Robbie Ray and Logan Webb. Everything else was either too inexperienced, suffered decline, or were literally position players most nights. The end result is leaving Randy Rodriguez to die out in the bullpen as they couldn't even hold a dry bar of soap most times. Come the trade deadline, they pulled the plug as they said goodbye to Tyler Rogers, Camilo Doval, and Mike Yastrzemski for bulk returns. Bob Melvin was scapegoated after being unable to get the team out of nowhere and close to where they wanted to be as a team. At this point, I don't know what the Giants do. It feels like this team is long overdue for a major scale rebuild, but they refuse to do so. It's literally like going to try and make additions to an already flawed roster is not going to do anything at this point. Bashing your skulls through can only get you so far. Also, we don't know about Justin Verlander. I didn't even get to him yet because it's word that he's not going to retire this year, but is he coming back? I don't know at this point what the Giants do. I really don't. So those were the teams that fell short of this goal. Now we can get into the fun stuff, the chaos of October. It has been something, that I will say. Let's get into a lot of the teams that have fallen short in the goal for the Commissioner's Trophy. The Boston Red Sox. I want to go on record and say in terms of regular season, the Red Sox accomplished a lot and really have something to look forward to. Under normal circumstances, I would not go too hard on the Red Sox if they simply got knocked out early, but sadly I can't. You guys lost to a team you had a stranglehold on for majority of the year and allowed the cancer of the Bronx to gloat up a storm once again. You did have a solid game 1 against Max Fried, but that was mostly due to Aaron Boone being a total idiot. Even for the Yankees hypothetically locking Boone in a broom closet for the remainder of the wild card series, too many fielding and pitching errors resulted in the team cruising to an easy win. You made Cam Schlichter look like he was Roger Clemens on the mound in Game 3. Don't worry, Boston, you'll still have opportunities to return, but you gotta do one thing. Increase payroll! The team as a whole isn't a problem as it's got quality hitters in Duran, Bregman, Rafaela, Story, and more with a solid rotation and bullpen. The problem is you are not a small market team and never will be. Quit hoarding your dollars and start paying people tons of money like you used to back in the day. You're the Boston Red Sox. Start acting like it. You may need a little of everything in the offseason and try to convince Bregman to opt back into his contract because he opted out. Why are you guys constantly trying to piss off your star players? The Cleveland Guardians. I hate this team way too much to the point where I am convinced God is doing this to take it out on me. A team that had a negative run differential in July, sold off pieces at the deadline, was mostly Jose Ramirez, Steven Kwan carrying whatever the pitching and bullpen was supposed to be, and lost 2 of their best arms due to a gambling scandal should have died in August. But because this team constantly sells its soul, they go on a massive tear to swipe the division away from a collapsing Tigers team because why not? Sadly, all of that is where the positive ends, as they were burned all their power on winning Game 2. Game 3 is where the Tigers finally woke up after months of collapsing and got back to them for taking the AL Central. They're likely going to be back here even if they end up losing Lane Thomas and not spending much in free agency. I can't prove it, but I'm convinced that James Dolan doesn't run this team. Other forces are at play. The Cincinnati Reds. Sadly, the outcome that a lot of people in the baseball world didn't want, but kind of expected. The minute Shohei Ohtani hit the leadoff home run in Game 1, the Reds were in trouble. No matter what they did, their young bats were bested by Snell and Yamamoto, while the Dodger Armada lit up green and the rest of their arms like the LA skyline. While the Reds have no reason to be ashamed by this outcome, part of me does have concern. Most of their rotation is hitting the open market, and it feels like that a lot of the reason why they got here was off luck and fortune. Even with the young core they have, a lot of guys were playing over their heads and not going to be projected to have these type of years again. Does this mean they have to keep adding to this, or do they want a soft reset and knowing that ownership isn't going to be gung-ho on spending? Even for being the Make-A-Wish a kid, take a victory knowing this. You brought one of the greatest things to the baseball world we had in a good bit. Hysterically laughing at the New York Mets. The San Diego Padres. Why'd you guys have to do this? I had so much promise in this group, only for you to fall short again. In a year that was paramount for the Padres to get it done, their prayers ended up being denied once again. They were able to get Game 2, but the Cubbies had a stranglehold on them from the word go. Their offense was locked down by the infield, the pitching left to die, and Mike Shildt making decisions that were questionable every single chance he had. The only real fight they had was scrumming with the officials at the end of the game. Even for the Padres having a great season, the best chance for this group might have been lost for falling short again. Besides the guys on their massive contracts, a lot of guys likely played their last game in San Diego. Luis Arraez, Dylan Cease, Nestor Cortez, Michael King, and Ryan O'Hearn are all UFAs. Mike Shildt is retiring after 2 years of service, and it's smelling like smoke is coming from the fire. Most of their farm system is barren after trading guys that they had to go all in at the deadline. Their GM, AJ Preller, the man who's incredibly ballsy, but also the reason they're here, is going to need a contract extension. Especially considering how the Padres are a small market and their RSN deal relapsed as well, panic is setting in for them. Padres are in for a long offseason. Pray to God you guys can survive it intact. Sorry, I had to. I love that clip. Today, my friends, we gathered to celebrate the death of the Yankee Revenge Tour. Call me biased as a salty Minnesota fan, but I'm not wrong in saying the Yankees failed. There is disintegration, and then there's what Canada did to you. They didn't just beat them in 4, they set records for the amount of runs that were dropping on them. By the end of Game 2, everything was just slowly being deflated from them keeping alive in Game 3. It also didn't help that the only guys hitting were Volpe, Judge, and McMahon. It's time to face the hard truth, Yanks. You're not winning a World Series unless you make full-scale changes and might be cooked at this point. Even with Cole coming back and a few more still here, Judge is getting older and close to his mid-30s. Goldschmidt, Chisholm, and Weaver are all UFAs. Bellinger is opting out of his contract to test free agency. The entire bullpen needs to be fixed. But you want to know the worst part of all this? Nothing's probably changing as Boone and Cashman are coming back for another year. Personally, though, I love that they're still here as they continue to make your lives miserable. You guys are out here claiming how it's so hard this time around to be a Yankees fan. Think of us, we're so miserable. Buddy, I'm a Minnesota sports fan. I was born in the darkness for my entire life. Welcome to Cancun, Yankees fans. I know for a fact that the entire baseball world is siding with me on this and relishing in the fact that you are now joining us. The Detroit Tigers. As much as I would love to, I honestly can't dunk on the Tigers. Yes, they did blow a massive division lead and were barely able to escape the clutches of Guardian BS. But at the very least in the ALDS, they did everything they possibly could to survive. Their pitching staff, in particular Fire God Tyreek Skubal, and the bullpen kept the Mariners' offense at bay for most of the series. Problem was, the hitting core was very hot and cold. Once Game 5 went into the extras of the 15th, it was all but the white flag on the year. While it sucks and they need to make decisions regarding Torres, Flaherty, Montero, and Finnegan in this offseason, you at least have the time with this core. Also, I'd recommend trying to get to see Tarek Skubal while you have the chance, because if the word is that he is wanting out soon, it's probably going to be rough sledding going future. Also, can you guys not blow a massive division lead anymore? The Philadelphia Phillies. I hate you guys. That's all I have to say with how this season went for the Phillies in this series. It didn't matter the results. This season is a massive failure for them. Harper, Turner, and Moore were exceptional. Even for losing Wheeler to injury, they had Nola, Sanchez, Suarez, and Luzardo dealing. So what was the problem? It was the bullpen again. Besides Yohan Duran, who they got at the deadline, everyone was playing a game of break everyone's heart at every chance they could get. This was a team that had the ability to beat the Dodgers and win it all. The fact they failed is catastrophic and going to have repercussions. Realmuto, Schwarber, Robertson, Suarez, Stram, Bader are all UFAs and want to get paid. The core of Harper, Turner, and Moore is getting older, and the time is winding down on how many years you will get to run this back. The fact that this feels like the end of the peak years is damning. All they have is one World Series appearance accomplished by years of mediocrity of playoff futility. This year was all or nothing for Philly, and they landed on bankrupt. Get ready, Philly, because I fear the worst is yet to come. The Chicago Cubs. Congrats, Chicago. One of the best seasons you've had since 2016, and all you have to show for it is being bested by Craig Counsell's ex. The reason they lost this series is simple. They couldn't perform outside the confines of Wrigley Field this playoffs. When you lose that ability in the playoffs, you're doomed. Also would have helped for not having to rely solely on Palencia and Pomerez to pitch. Don't worry, Cubs, it's likely not going to be end of the window yet. It's probably just opening, in fact. Michael Busch, PCA, Suzuki, and more are likely going to get better and not immediately due for contracts yet. They had some great options emerge in pitching in the likes of Horton and a ton more of their bullpen arms. That being said, the Cubbies will have to work to get Imanga and Tucker contract extensions and a few guys to make decisions on. While it's a tough loss, take it in pride in knowing that you guys are on the rebound. Also the fact that you are probably the best team in Chicago for the few months. The Seattle Mariners. Did you guys seriously have to do that? Why? You literally had pulled off all these miracles and were moments away from history, only to end up kicking your fans square in the nuts for the millionth time and reinforcing one of the stalest memes in baseball existence. Cal Raleigh is going to win MVP. J-Rod was outstanding. Jorge Polanco somehow turned into Edgar Martinez, and more unsung heroes on both sides of the ball. Yet once again, the only thing you're known for is being another team of legendary Mariners that never finished. George Springer broke the hearts of Seattle with one swing. By the way, you had Munoz in the pen, and you didn't go to him. Dan Wilson should be hung by his drawers off the Space Needle, yet he's probably coming back next year. At this point, I don't know what else you do if you're the Mariners that doesn't involve me being completely dark on this program. They had them by the throats, and they failed to get it done. Chances like this rarely come around again, I would know being a Twins fan, and this is especially true for the Mariners. Naylor's going to be a free agent, same with Suarez. Munoz has a player option, and who knows how long until these guys wonder if this is even going to happen at any point. Maybe one of these days Seattle will realize their expectations and finally shed their demons. Now all they're left is agony and wasting money on an Etsy witch. The Milwaukee Brewers. Why do you guys do this to yourself? Like, honest question, why do you do this to yourselves? I get you ran into a buzzsaw, but people had legit hope for you this time around. The youthful hitting core of Truang, Churio, Collins, and Friedlich were raking all year. Yelich was excellent with more veteran depth around him. They literally had salvation in pitching with phenom Jacob Mizorowski anchoring their rotation alongside Quintana and Peralta. The bullpen wasn't a liability at all this year, and it didn't even collapse. The simple fact is they just ran into a buzzsaw. That's the worst part. They simply just lost. 9 times out of 10, when the mom and pop has to go up against Walmart, they're most likely going to end up down the drain. No matter the hitter or pitcher that the Brewers threw against the Dodgers, they simply got outmatched in every single aspect. This isn't even the end of their window, but it's frustrating that this is their fate again. Coming from experience, these chances don't come around every year. You got to make the most of them while they count. All of Wisconsin gets another year of depression as they enter the offseason. At the very least, you can hold on to this. You made Euchre proud, boys. It's not much, but you can at least hang your hats on it. If you somehow managed to survive my endless growing descent into madness, congratulations, we're at the final matchup. However, before we conclude, there are 2 more teams we need to go over for. So who's the representative of the National League? Well, looky here, the LA Dodgers. As much as we all wished to deny it and thought it would be unlikely, we all knew that this was inevitable, that you would be back. When you're spending just over the national GDP of a small few island nations on your payroll, anything less than a World Series appearance is considered a failure. Once again, the defending champions own the infinite money glitch where they can simply purchase and acquire anyone they deem worthy of the Dodger blue. In terms of their roster, there's not much that has changed from last year's team. 2 future Hall of Famers in Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. Will Smith is one of the top catchers in baseball. Max Muncy having a career year to get a new contract in the offseason. Add to it with the returning faces in Teoscar Hernandez, center fielder Andy Pages, and of course, the legendary Shohei Ohtani. This time around, though, it is a bit different with Ohtani. Not only showing his game-changing bat, but his ability to throw fireballs on the mound as a starting pitcher. The only new guys to their hitting core this time around are their utility man Hyung-Sung Kim, Michael Conforto, Miguel Rojas, and Alex Call, who was brought in at the deadline. A big reason is because they have invested a lot of their resources into their pitching arms. Remember back in July when they were all banged up? They got healthy. When at full strength, it is a legit nightmare for any hitters. On top of Shohei, it also features 2 of Japan's top exports in returning Yoshinobu Yamamoto and their newest asset in Roki Sasaki. While he struggled in the regular season, he has been in the relief role and dominated as a force on the mound. On top of the returning Tyler Glasnow, you will have another former Ray from the 2020 World Series looking for revenge in Blake Snell, who's been having a Cy Young caliber season. The final piece to this rotation comes in the form of the legendary Clayton Kershaw. This is officially his last ride as he's going to be retiring at the end of the regular season, but you know that he can still deal in a relief role. The bullpen this time around isn't as strong as many people think it is, but the likes of Blake Treinen, Anthony Banda, Jack Dreyer, Alex Viesa, and more have the ability to clutch up when needed. People groan at the Dodgers' success, but they aren't breaking any rules. Like it or not, they have become the new evil of baseball and simply will win until somebody else has the balls to beat them or outspend them. They took the Reds to the woodshed, they cracked the bell in Philly, and they slayed the power of friendship in Milwaukee. Now they have the chance to repeat as champions and continue to reign over the peons that cope and seethe at their greatness. So who's the lucky victim coming from the American League this time? Oh, Canada, our home and name. Okay, I'll save you the trouble. The Toronto Blue Jays. Who knew the best strategy for a squad failing to meet expectations was just to simply wait and be patient? If you remember, at one point there were a lot of frustrations with John Schneider and Ross Atkins up in Toronto. Me in particular was having some frustrations. From the 8-1 collapse in 2022 to pulling Barrios in 2023, all of Canada really wanted them gone. However, with a little patience and replacing their terrible hitting coach, it was the perfect formula to recreate the team. They went from underachieving to surging to the top of the American League overnight. Their vision of the new age Blue Jay machine has shown up and shown out these playoffs. A team that has slowly acquired and developed talent over the years as they've created a squad ripe with talent. Even with their star shortstop Bo Bichette missing most of this run, it's a very exciting group that can hit and field with authority. Speaking of Bichette, he's going to be returning for the World Series in good time as he is also due for a contract in the offseason. As for the rest, it's a very interesting group. Addison Barger as their homegrown player at third, their utility man Ernie Clement being the young Sung Yulman at shortstop, Cleveland legend Andres Jimenez flashing his gold glove and bat on several occasions, all-star catcher Alejandro Kirk being an absolute beast at the dish and one of the top battery maids in the game today. However, the main prize of the infield is the man at first, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., The son of the legendary player got paid a king's ransom this year, and he is rewarding Canada. Clutch hitting power and dingers galore that makes Big Papi himself smile with envy. Their outfield is where a lot of their experience lies. Former champion with Houston and George Springer, longtime Baltimore veteran Anthony Santander, journeyman in Miles Straw, Dalton Varsho, Javis Schneider, and Nathan Lukes make up a quality unit and the veteran leadership of this group. However, the true success for this run has been in their pitching. Toronto has collected some quality free agents in the forms of Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and Jose Barrios over the years. Add to it with their deadline pickup of Shane Bieber and their rookie Trey Savage, it is a starting five that mows down their opposition in blazing speed. If that's not enough, they do have a wild card up their sleeve. Similar to the Dodgers, they also have a future Hall of Famer who's likely going to be on his last legs this year. Max Scherzer, nowhere near his past self, he is still a guy you have to take seriously on the mound or else he'll make you pay for it. Their bullpen is an underrated group featuring the likes of Sir Anthony Dominguez, Braden Fisher, Mason Fluharty, Brandon Little, the Minnesota GOAT Louis Varland, and Yadiel Rodriguez. If you survive them, you reach their final boss in the form of closer Jeff Hoffman, locking down the ninth in several instances this playoffs and throughout the regular season. These guys alone, Toronto has achieved expectations that many have placed on them for years now and have a chance at history. They defeated the Bronx Bombers and bested Mariner Magic. Now they seek to finish the job. Their first World Series appearance since 1993 and a chance to add a third World Series title to their mantle. Canada got pissed off by all the 51st state jokes and decided to take it personally. They owned us in their game and now they seek to conquer our nation's pastime. Who gets to be insufferable this time? Now my prediction. Now, here's the thing. I personally am hoping Canada wins it all for the sake of parity in this sport. I feel like it's time, and I think I would like to see some difference instead of just the Dodgers winning all the time. However, because they spent a ton of energy to defeat the Mariners, we are likely going to get Dodgers in 5 or 6. Probably 5 because that's how it works. Hey, don't hate the rules, just hate the player. Or no, I don't know anymore. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you were able to survive my madness. And with that being said, I will see you guys next time. Peace!